Hello everyone, and welcome to The Godfather. This, of course, is a podcast covering the classic 1972 film by Francis Ford Coppola. Since its release, The Godfather has become one of the most critically acclaimed films of all time. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, of which it won 3, and its sequel won 6, I think. When people talk about film trilogies, The Godfather is always one that comes up. But The Godfather, the original, is the film that's helmed up to be the best, alongside films such as Vertigo, Tokyo Story, and Citizen Kane. People consider The Godfather to be one of the greats. But here today, on the Media Podcast, we're going to answer the important question: is The Godfather better than Tower Heist? Okay. So that's the through line here. You guys have all seen The Godfather?
Yeah.
Have you all seen Tower Heist?
Wait, is it? Wait, what did you say? Is it better than Tower Heist?
Yep, that's what we're answering it.
Ooh, I'm excited to have this conversation.
Okay, so I think by the end of the episode, we'll decide. We'll have a vote. Okay.
Well, oh man, Ben Stiller. I can feel his spirit, guiding me. To argue for him in this episode, to argue his case.
So in all seriousness, the Godfather, it's pretty good. Came out in 1972, as I said. Written by Mario Puzo, the writer of the original book, and Francis Ford Coppola, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. The film stars Marlon Brando as Don Vito Corleone, and follows his kind of demise, I'd say. Starts with the wedding of his daughter Connie, and from then on you kind of follow how his family goes, and the film ends, spoilers, with Vito dead and Michael becoming the Godfather, and the door, and that great final shot, closing on his wife Kay. So, Godfather. What did you guys think of it?
Alright, so, is this film good? Well, I don't know. Who had seen this film before we started this whole podcast thing?
I had seen it once or twice.
Yeah, I assume you would have. Jono, had you seen it before?
No, this was my first time seeing it.
Oh yeah, same. All right, first thing I wanna ask Jono, and also ask myself. Do you feel that the perception of it being, in the top 5 IMDb best film ever made kind of list, do you think that helped or hampered your viewing experience with The Godfather Part 1?
Probably hampered it a bit, because I was kind of going, yeah, it's an alright film, but what makes it special? And I don't know if I ever really found that whilst watching through it.
Did you watch the entire film in one go or over 2 separate days?
All within the same day, but I had to have a break for dinner, I think.
Oh, sure.
Like a 3-hour-long film.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I remember that when we watched it, Tony, you just expected it to be like an hour and a half or so. So you thought everything was just going to get sorted, They were going to get Solozzo, they were going to get Captain McCluskey. I'm afraid not.
Well, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. I think Jono brings up a very salient point that I think there's not really any one sort of, oh my god, the blank in Godfather is the reason why it's held up for so long. I think it probably is just more of an all-around strong film. If I had to imagine it from the perspective of someone who is it is the best film of all time, it's probably just more of an all-around good execution, in every department, rather than one specific one. If I had to guess, what do you feel, Godfather fans, Ethan and Harry?
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with you on that one, because I have a similar feeling with this film that I get of Shawshank Redemption, and I think that's why Shawshank and both this film are so, critically acclaimed, and I think it's because they're extremely well-rounded films. Every
Yeah.
aspect of it, from performances to story to dialogue to setting, all of that is just done to a high enough standard. And I think The Godfather is probably better. Unfortunately, I think. Well, I mean, I'm not going to talk about Shawshank at all, but yeah, I think it's because it's so well-rounded and there isn't really that much of it that's quite bad. And if it is, it'll be in very short bursts and it won't be throughout the entire film, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it might be more of a case of like, rather than being everyone's favourite film, it's probably just a film that a lot of critics can agree is like in their top five or so. And because everyone probably has different opinions of what the best film is, because say one guy will more prefer like having a really good script, or one guy will prefer have really good, I don't know, cinematography. But because The Godfather does so many things to an almost like really good standard, then it sort of averages out as being as good as it is, if that makes sense. If that's the point.
I think the reason it's got so much acclaim, it's not like, if you look at like critics lists, they don't have it at the top. Very rarely they have it at the top. It's often the audience ones, because this is one of those rare films that critics really love and really rave about. But there are so many of those. But this is also a very accessible film, and I feel like just based on the fact that like the source material, which in fairness I haven't read, by Puza's own admission, is quite simple. It's got a lot of texture to it, but the story at the heart of it isn't particularly difficult to follow, and it's quite intriguing, kind of like a soap. It's kind of like family beef, pretty much, and it's more about the kind of the world that he captures that's really captivating, and in a similar way to Star Wars, this kind of just caught on, like it worked for audiences, and it's very easy to see when you watch it, like it's a 3-hour crime epic, the way it's shot is almost timeless, the performances are fantastic. Marlon Brando, who for his kind of the way he's kind of changed and revolutionized how acting worked in like the 30s, 20s and 30s, this is like a very good role for him. I think this is probably where a lot of people know him best from, and it's kind of a culmination of a bunch of factors which you've touched upon previously that kind of make The Godfather seen as one of the greatest films of all time. I said when in the last episode, when you were going to watch it, don't go into this thinking this is going to be the greatest film of all time, because nothing can live up to that expectations. But I hope, detached from that, you enjoyed it as a standalone film. You were entertained by it. I know it's long, but you appreciated its merits.
I definitely don't hate it. I think it has a lot of strong points. I was going to say that although this is the kind of thing that doesn't really directly impact your experience, as you said, it's made a long time ago, and it's sort of influenced film in this like long-reaching way that when comparing it to the new hotness, Tower Heist, it might have not as many newfangled bells and whistles, but that's because it stood that test of time of, I don't know, 40, 50 years at this point, if I can do maths. Probably can't.
Sorry, I'm just dying.
Don Vito in the game, Harry. Oh man, yeah. So,
I think what helps this as well, not only to be kind of accessible, but also very well acclaimed, is just the authenticity of it. Like, I don't want to be one of these like, oh, kids these days with their special effects, but everything in this film is like real. Like at that wedding, they found like 100 to 200 random Italian American people to kind of dance around at this wedding. And like everything about it, and I love the opening scene. We'll probably talk about that more. But just it feels so authentic, and because you kind of buy into the family at the start, you're kind of compelled through the twists and turns of the narrative.
Yeah, and I think the opening is very strong. I think I was a bit hesitant because I was like, oh man, it's got such a reputation and of being a good film, and then you tell me that it starts with like the first hour as being a wedding. I'm like, oh no, and I sort of was a bit worried that it would be a bit dry, be a bit humorless, but it definitely isn't. Like, you know, there's quite a few good jokes in this film, you know, almost quips. I'm not saying it's like a Marvel film, but you know, it keeps the spirits up for more than you would expect for a film that is about, you know, mafia crime boss.
And after the wedding, it's like, you might laugh at this. I don't know if you will, but I'd say it intersperses like the dialogue scenes and the character building with quite shocking action. Like very suddenly, it will be like, oh shit, there's a horse in this guy's bed, and then you'll have like a moment of quiet and like something, and then oh shit, the Don's been shot, and then then it's a bit more quiet, and then the hospital scene, and then suddenly Michael shoots the Turk, and then like suddenly Apollonia's car blows up. It's like these kind of shocking moments. Sonny getting killed, like these like completely unexpected moments that like just completely like you might be thinking, oh okay, I wonder what's going to happen here, and then suddenly it completely twists in a new direction. And I feel like that kind of shock value, especially the first time I view it, just made me think like, oh, this is one of the best films I've ever seen. And I don't know if I'm interested to hear what Jono thinks, if he kind of got any of that.
I say, because I was surprised, because I was like, those are the sort of things I kind of love, those sudden moments, but they just didn't do anything for me in this film. And I sort of remember thinking that, well, possibly a bit so is with the first one, you've got the horse head in the bed, which comes in at about half an hour into the film. And I always sort of look, well,
you can see that one coming though.
Because I'm like, oh yes, I know the horse. This is going to be the horse's head and the thing. And I'm like, yeah, it was in there. Woo! And I'm like, what? But I only really care about that because like it's been, you know, it was in The Simpsons that one time. Well, not exactly, but that's a bit where there's a horse in Lisa's bed. It's like, that was just like, I don't know. It was. Just felt it was iconic, and I wasn't. Well, I slightly knew why. It does a good job leading up to it, but it's
definitely the Simpsons has definitely made this film worse because there's a line that is "I was sleeping with the fishes," that is like, you know, iconic line from The Godfather that has just been memed by the Simpsons to be this weird
Fat Tony
joke
is
with
basically like the biggest
Fat Tony
joke. Yeah,
and that thing is used by like Troy McClure as like a weird, like, literal take on sleeping with fishes. It's quite weird. And you just think of that as you watch that scene. You're like, oh no. I think Harry brought up a good point where it's probably become too iconic, like in a way that doesn't aid the film. Like in contrast to something like Star Wars, where you point at the things, you're like, that's the thing I know. Whereas this is just like, oh man, that's the thing that's been taken the piss out of, but it's been played quite straight here. And like, I can't really say that as the fault of the film, but at the same time, it also means those things have a bit less weight. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that was a reoccurring thing for me, is that like, it's, I don't know, the whole nature of these kind of mafia-esque families and these people trying to be cool basically with their little guns and whatever, it just to me is inherently a funny thing. So whenever it's tried to be serious, it often misses for me.
I think you're getting the same thing I have with crime films, Johnny. I think this is that same feeling.
I would argue that that's more relevant to a film like Goodfellas, where it's almost taking it out of the context that it existed in, by going like, oh, this is crime now, whereas crime now is a lot less kind of traditional. Whereas when this was written and set, this like the mafia was like a real thing. And I know there's been a lot of shit mafia films, but I'd say this kind of spawned a lot of imitators, which didn't kind of do it as well. But I wouldn't say it's so much as being cool. It's more a thing that happened because of reasons it kind of tries to go into. Maybe the second one a bit more about immigrants coming over and feeling kind of let down by America as an institution, and like kind of having to set up their own families to kind of deal with that. It's it's less like Goodfellas, like we just want to fuck bitches and snort coke, or like Scarface.
It's not what is it? A Scorsese film, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd say it's definitely more rooted in kind of a tradition, and it's like a 20-minute stretch where he kind of goes back to where he came from, which I really like. Even though he does have that black eye for like ever.
It makes the passing of time so weird for that section. But anyway, yeah, I think I think I can see where Jono is coming from with that point he just made, but I would say that the opening is when it's that guy talking about, you know, his daughter that was attacked by, you know, those two teenagers. I think that does a good job of setting tone, you know, and then you get Don Vito saying, like, we're not murderers, you know, but, you know, I'll do it because you're my friend or whatever he says, I don't know. And I think that, you know, is like okay, that's the sort of what they're going for, you know. And I think it presents it in a way that makes it believable, in my opinion. Man.
So, yeah, it's a good first scene, but I think the opening in general, for me, I don't know, the wedding's. I'm in two minds about the wedding, because it's a nice way to like bring all the characters together and like introduce them in this kind of different setting. But at the same time, I just didn't get interested in that first 20 minutes really. I mean, I got a bit interested by that first scene because of that, and then it just sort of, you know, kept on going. I was like, okay, I've kind of fallen out of it a bit now. And then that I think is part of the reason as well that the horse moment didn't entirely bring it back much, because I wasn't fully invested. By that point,
I don't think it's very hooking, the beginning. I'll give you that. It's not like it throws something like exciting at you like very early on, but at the same time I think there's enough interest in the way that it sort of presents this like crime family, you know, that's this mafia, you know, these powerful criminal lord people, right, with this contrast of this like, you know, family event. And you get the things of like, okay, they're all gonna take photos, but then there's one guy they take a photo of and he's just like, no, give me that film, I have to destroy it in case the FBI knows where I am, you know. I think that's quite interesting. And you get the story that Michael tells wife number one of this film.
Kay Adams.
Yeah, Kay. About, you know, Luca Brasi and Marlon Brando. You know, I assume that's Marlon Brando. The singer story of how, you know, he, you know, muscled him in, and that's sort of like foreshadowing, you know, how the film sort of plays out, how these mafia types approach problem solving. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I do that. I'd like that. Well, just the way that the character is built up, and then just like the first thing we see him do basically is die. I did Luca Brasi. I did enjoy that. That's the best plot twist since
Yoda. Yeah, I feel like if you also, I know this might sound weird, but the more you see the film, I think the more you'll enjoy the wedding, because on the first viewing, it kind of expects a lot of you. It expects you to get who is related to who, what their names are, what their defining characteristics are, what their role in the family is, and it kind of balances that with not being too serious, not being too dark, even though ironically this is probably the darkest film in lighting that's ever been shot. The cinematographer Gordon Willis was helmed for The Prince of Darkness for his work that he did in The Godfather, and often cast members would lament the fact that if they tried to improvise or move like a step in the wrong direction, that they would have to kind of stop because they would be covered completely in shadow. What he really wanted to do was kind of capture this kind of duality, which is really well seen in the wedding scene of like the dark interiors and like the kind of the power of the Don, and then like when everyone's out in the open, they're exposed, they're normal, they're like real people.
Yeah, it's a good contrast.
Look at the way he's shot when he's sitting on his chair in his office or in a meeting versus when he's out buying fruit, and like that kind of complete contrast is just I find that really interesting. And the way that Michael is originally shot, and like what he's wearing, like the American uniform, and then how he kind of develops the film until he kind of becomes his father at the end.
Yeah, that is one thing about this film that I quite like, but at the same time don't really like. And that's I have this book in my room, and it tells you it gives you an idea of how you should write stories. And the one example they use recurringly without fail is Michael's arc, because it's so well done in the film. But my problem with that is that I don't think Al Pacino is particularly good in this film compared to the rest of the cast. And I know that Harry probably disagrees with me. Doesn't probably. I think he does. But I just think he plays that character. He plays it quite sterile and bland. And it's also that it's got the thing of how when Jack Nicholson comes to The Shining, he's mad from the beginning. And I think that The Godfather should have had that thing where you can clearly see a physical difference between the beginning and the end. But I think at the beginning he already see. I mean, I don't think he acts like he is the Godfather, but he definitely. I mean, he definitely plays the character the same way. Like, he's still got the same, oh, I'm not really going to move any muscles in my face kind of acting sort of thing. I don't think that Al Pacino is particularly good in this one. I don't think he's that great in the second one either. In fact, he's probably even more boring in the second one. And the third one...
Yeah, I mean, my big disagreement is I just think Michael is a very cold person. He lacks charisma. And for that to be engaging is kind of difficult. But I think he manages to pull it off. He's very subtle, which I get. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, and especially with the second one when you're spending half the film with him, and he's obviously had his arc in the first one. The only way he can really go is by kind of being even more of a kind of monster. But I get your criticisms, especially when you've got James Caan as Sonny, who's kind of so charismatic.
Yeah,
and Don Vito himself.
That's the thing. I think all of the siblings and Brando. I mean, it's difficult to say anything about Mama Corleone because she's not really in the film. But I think that entire family has like a really rich diversity in their sort of personalities and stuff like that. And they all definitely have their own flaws and they're all definitely human and quite interesting. And it's not just, four siblings who are all kind of the same sort of generic Italian-American kind of mob person. They definitely all do have their own little thing going on, which I quite like. It makes it for an interesting watch, I think.
Yeah, even though Fredo's doesn't get as much screen time as he should.
Yeah, well, that's because Mo Green is stealing him away.
You talked to Barzini.
Alright, yeah. For those of you that don't know, in the audience, there's an overdubbed section of dialogue in The Godfather that sounds incredibly jarring, and it's just I talk to Barzini.
They got James L. Jones in.
A regular conversation, and it like doesn't match anyone's voice at all. But anyway, it's just become a recurring thing. So I just want to quickly, we're 22 minutes, and just want to give a quick sort of summary of how the 3-hour film, how it fills its time. So I think the easiest way to split it is the first half is the setup with the wedding, and then it leads into this deal, right, where some other guy offers them to get in on this heroin industry, and they turn him down, and that leads to sort of a gang war that summarizes with around halfway through the film, Michael kills Sollozzo, and that's that. And then the second half is a sort of protracted war that continues on from that event, which leads to him then killing the other 5 heads of the family. And I would say, as my hashtag hot take, that I think the film probably isn't as strong from him killing Sollozzo onward. Because
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I think it's not like a huge jump in quality. It's my only kind of thing I don't like is the fact that it's very kind of it's very linear in its storytelling. It doesn't jump around too much. Like obviously there's a few like days, maybe even a few weeks pass, but it's very much like it feels like you're watching just a very kind of linear film. And then suddenly you're having these radical time jumps in between scenes, which for me anyway, it kind of takes a bit of tension out of it. But I'd still say it's perhaps the best scene in the film between Al Pacino and Marlon Brando is in the second half. So, what do you guys think?
Jono, do you agree with the second half being not as good, or do you dislike?
I feel the the second half is weaker because it does sort of jump around more, and that's where it really for me starts just to become like here's a character they could probably going to die in a bit because like we're now I don't know, I just especially near the end with the killing of the like I mean that's where I sort of lost some of the plot really. I was just like, wait, but how does that help them? What's really I kind of get some of what's going on, but I don't see how that's really helping the I don't know, I just sort of lost it near the end, I'll be honest.
I mean, I would say that, like, right at the very end, you know, it picks back up again, at least with the action that is, you know, him going around and killing all the 5 guys, if that makes sense.
It's a good little bit mixed in with him, like, becoming an actual godfather and sort of having all the saying how he's a godly man or whatever whilst all this is happening, is a great piece. But just in, I don't know, I was reminded kind of of Inglourious Bastards in the sense of there are some really great moments for me in this film, but for me they're not brought together with enough of an interesting thing.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, Jono, because I think one of my big gripes is this with why I don't like the second half as much, is it feels like they're not really working towards anything that you can get invested in, because the first half you're like, okay, they'll kill Sollozzo and they'll solve the problem. Basically they'll get revenge for Don Vito being assassinated. They'll stop attempts on his life. But then it just sort of seems that from then onwards it's a protracted war, and so you're like, okay, well I guess we're working towards ending this war, I guess, except the enemy side doesn't want to be having this war. The only person who's really wants this war is Sonny, and he's not really, like, I don't really buy that he wants to get revenge anymore. Like, it just seems a bit annoying that he's so like, oh, we have to keep fighting this war. It's like, no, just end the film. You had a good first hour and a half at the beginning here, in my opinion. But I mean, I do think it does some good things in the second half. I see why it is, as long as it is. But I don't know, I just sort of didn't really feel like I was rooting for anything in the second half of the film. If that is a fair complaint, Harry and Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's less of a problem for me and Harry because, for starters, I think we like the film more, but also because we've already seen the film before, so we know the direction that it's going to take. If you're watching it for the first time, then I completely understand that, and I get it. And it is a valid criticism as well. I guess different people care on whether story has a clear path that it's going to follow, or if you're not really sure where it's headed, and I completely understand why you say that, because you're right, the first half is definitely, they have a target or a goal and they're going to set out to achieve that, and they kind of do, and then the second half is kind of like, well, where do we go from here? And it does have like a conclusion, but you are right, it is more aimless. Like I do think that.
Yeah, and even if
it's not really goal based, I would argue it's more kind of character based. And if you're not, I guess if you're not completely compelled.
The character was Sonny that was driving it, and I'm like, oh, you picked the worst one.
It's the worst one.
I guess it kind of hopes that you're invested in the family and how they're kind of doing.
Yeah, but it just.
And that goes back to what we were talking about with the wedding, like showing that at the start, showing the kind of just like a normal family, and then contrasting that with the kind of the thing that they do, which you don't see much of. So I mean, it is quite easy to come out of the film with the wrong impression, kind of the fact that it glorifies crime in a way, which I don't think the film does.
No, I wouldn't say it does. Like, I think it is interesting that it sort of presents these, criminals, mafia leaders as they do have some form of moral code. They do have some things of like, no, selling drugs to kids is infamia, if I can say that word in a non-butchered Italian accent. I don't know what it means. Bad, I assume. And that, they try and, present them as family men. But I think you can sort of have that contrast. I think it does make sense that why they would be that way, it's believable. But I think it is just less about the characters and more it just sort of feels like hard to get invested in the act of the scenes being like, they feel like problems that Sonny is like put in front of himself, and like I think it would have been simple to sort of make it, to give it the second half a bit more direction if they just more clearly said that it's like, hey, we need to have the second half of this film because Barzini is the head. He's like the reason we have to do this. He's the reason, like, we're never going to stop unless we can take him out. And I don't know, that would have, I get that it's a good reveal. I talked to Ethan about this, like, yeah, it makes sense as a reveal, but it comes at the cost of, knowing where the story's going, if that makes sense.
Mm. And the fact that, like, different members of the family have like differing kind of goals, names. Like,
yeah, that's true.
They're kind of at ends, and kind of it's unlike like a normal kind of crime film where there'd be the boss and the boss's word would go. The fact that you have this bickering, it almost makes them, like, the characters feel like they are a family. And I'd say I do like the second one a lot. I'm sure I think Ethan's the one who'll like it the most, and even he doesn't like it that much. But a criticism I would accept of the second one is that because you're missing a couple of members, it kind of the dynamic isn't as strong, and I feel like the strength in this film is definitely in the dynamic between
But
especially the brothers.
I still feel like a film should be able to work through losing key members. It should still be able to come up with a plot with the few characters it has remaining.
Especially since it has such a big cast.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
But it's
I
the fact
I think
that
it does. I'm just.
yeah. Sure, no, I get that. But it's the fact that by the second film they've lost Brando, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Sonny's an idiot, but I do like Sonny a lot. And I guess yeah, exactly. So and a lot of the other characters are kind of in the periphery. The only three characters you really have left, I guess, and they do introduce some more, are Michael, Fredo, and Tom Hagen. And Tom Hagen's like the only character that I enjoy from that half, from the half of the second
Connie has
film.
a bit more to do.
Oh, I mean, only slightly
Connie's
more.
She's in the third one a lot.
Yeah, she's in the third one quite a lot, which is good because I quite like Connie. So.
Yeah. I will say that like I agree with Harry's like the point on like I think the scenes where they're bickering, they're sort of like arguing and planning what to do next. They are quite strong. They show a strong dynamic. It's just that you will hear the like best course of action from someone like Tom Hagen who will say, "We'll just do this. We'll do this. We'll make peace after doing this and this," and it seems like a perfectly reasonable plan. And then Sonny will be like, "No, we're going to war," and then they'll go to war. And like, they could have done the other thing.
You should understand like why he wants to do that, and of course you're going to be frustrated.
I don't. They've killed more of them than they've killed of him at that point.
It's because they got Pop. Those damn Japs.
Yeah,
that's alright.
No, I do get it. And a film kind of, you'll probably disagree with me, as Tony, but I think a film does need some level of frustration. Like it obviously needs obstacles, but you are meant to get angry with characters if they're not doing what seems to be the most sensible course of action.
It's just that, Harry said, like, it's character driven, and I'm like, the character in charge is just being a bit insufferable at the moment. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, when that guy, kicked him when he had been shot 20 times, I'm like, yeah, fair enough. He was being a real idiot,
Yeah.
He's just such a hothead.
I know, he is such a hothead.
Yeah.
There's quite a few subplots in this film as well that get sort of thrown in there.
Vagina tightening.
I cut that
one. So glad they just kept that in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the this in terms of adaptation is that it was written by Mario Puzo. So he's obviously he's talked before about this is almost his second draft of the book. So he took the ideas that worked and resonated with the book, and the film rights were acquired when he just finished writing, or was in the process of almost finishing. Very, very cheap.
Yeah.
And he kind of saw it as a chance to amend. And I think he also wrote the second one, which is interesting because apparently, I haven't read it, I really should. The book follows a young Vito Corleone as well, and half of the second film does that as well. So.
Yes, it does. It even has some of the moments from the second one where there's the basically the procession when Robert De Niro is like on the rooftops following that guy. It does have like a lot of the key moments from the second film, but
Don Fanucci.
Yeah. But actually, now that we've mentioned the book, because I've read the book as well and I really liked the book, and I think I guess it depends on what the filmmaker wants to focus on. But I remember reading the book and thinking that it was just, I don't know, I think coherent's the wrong word, but I think they just kept it more concise somehow. And I think what they tried to focus on more than anything was the extent of Vito's influence, because in the book you show all of these characters, and you do have like the main plot, and don't get me wrong, but there is this one character who's going to Las Vegas, and it's a strange subplot for sure. And I know why they don't include it in the film, but what makes the book so good is that you really get a sense of power and someone who really does have a far reach over this entire country, like with a simple snap of his fingers. One of his godsons or godchildren or someone who's related to him will instantly have what they want somewhere else in it. They just do a really good job of that in the book, and I think in the film, I think it suffers a little bit because I think they want to try and focus on a lot of other things, and I think in the book there's some key characters in the film that don't focus on as much as they do in the film. So I mean, it just depends on where you want to spend your time focusing on,
I still think they do a pretty good job of showing off how powerful Don Vito is, though. I think there's a lot of interesting things they do with that. Like
Casting Marlon Brando is the first one. Like
Yeah.
immediately, he's just got this air of like gravitas. Like the second you kind of see him in that like iconic pose with the cat, you know, what a great guy.
Yeah. I just think you get a bit more of that from the book. That's all. That's kind of what I like about it.
I guess the difference is like they have to kind of show it.
Mm.
I think like the way it's shot, especially with the cinematography, they do a good job of that. Is probably a bit there's less time to go into it because of course the way the plot moves, Vito's in about 40 minutes of the film, so you can't spend like loads of time with him. But yeah. I'd say they communicate that idea, maybe not as effectively, but still pretty well.
I think there are still like there's neat things like at the wedding. You know, you get certain things like Senator so and so said they couldn't attend. And that like piques your interest. You're like, ooh, he's friends with senators. And later up it comes up like, oh man, you've got all these senators in your pocket. You know, why didn't you share them? You know, and I think it does a good job of like showing his reach and power in a way that doesn't feel like that feels natural. You know, well exposited.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
You should just be glad that they don't include the contents of the Sicilian either in this film, because then it would be a 6-hour film. It would be twice the length. Because in that book, which I've also read, and I like it even more than The Godfather as well, actually. It's all about what happens to Michael when he goes over to Sicily in exile, and he basically gets caught in between this war between a bunch of bandits and the Carabinieri, because basically this group of bandits, which is controlled by, I can't remember his name, but he starts off as kind of like a peasant boy, and then he gradually gets more and more power, and you see that arc, and it's written really well in the book. And another thing that and the Godfather book both do extremely well as well, and I think the film does this to an extent as well. You really get a sense that the person who is doing the writing here knows a lot about Sicilian culture, and using all these terms like consigliere and pesanovante and things like that, and it's just so. I mean, you can tell that this guy knows a lot about historical significance and things like that. And I think you get quite a bit of that in the second one, don't you? Because there's that court hearing where you learn a lot
Especially
more
with the
about the
flashback
infrastructure of the of the mob. And the flashback, yeah.
Yeah, the court sequence in the second one is insane. Like it literally is. They actually were tried by a real court. Like that is fucking. It's like you're watching a documentary.
Yeah.
Like that's too realistic. I don't like it. It actually feels real. Whereas I think I was literally about to say about the consigliere thing, and like it makes you feel like you're smart as well. Like, oh yeah, I know what consigliere is. I'm in with these people. I've got that. And the character of Clemenza really he's really representative of kind of the old ways he's come over with the Don as we see in the second film. I really like the authenticity of that.
Although, as we did say at the beginning of how like this film has been sort of memed to its detriment, when consigliere was mentioned, there was a tiny voice in the back of my mind that was reminding me of Ethan's script on The Informant. It was like, oh no, he needs a right hand man. He needs 10 people in place before he can move.
I wouldn't judge the shit.
I wouldn't judge.
It's spawned off The Godfather like The Informant.
At the same time,
Whoa! Calm down a bit, Harry.
That was quite harsh.
No.
It was funny.
It is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Still better than Spirited Near, though.
Spirited Near is good. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just sort of a story that is kind of prone to that, if that makes sense. That's why it's just happened.
Yeah, I guess you could say the same with Star Wars or anything that's very iconic. Right. Should we keep Johnny?
Yeah. Oh, I've been doing my usual thing of randomly going through trivia stuff. Just come up with Stanley Kubrick thought the film had the best cast ever and could be the best movie ever made.
You gotta listen to Stanley Kubrick. The man knows what he's doing. Come on. Constable Coppola makes the definitive gangster film. Kubrick makes the definitive sci-fi film. We can all agree on that.
Yep.
Alright, do you guys have anything else to say before we kind of go on to giving our scores and answering the question that's on everyone's mind? is The Godfather better than Tower Heist?
The time-old debate finally comes to a close today. A lot of the subplots aren't that great. There's like no good female characters. They're all basically objects. I guess you kind of have to accept that as artifact of the time, even though it's really bad.
I felt that with artifact of the time stuff. Just the well, I can't remember what his name is, but the singer like starts crying in front of the Godfather, and he just like slaps him and goes, that's not what a man does, or whatever. Just like, no.
Fair enough. Although,
but that was like, no, that's part of the thing, I guess.
Yeah. I have, we've given it like, I don't know, a couple of days since watching it, or at least I have, and there were a few things that were quite interesting that I noticed. Like early on in the film, it sets up that like, the Don is a man who as soon as there's bad news, he wants to hear it. Yet later in the film, when Sonny dies, there's Tom Hagen goes to take a drink before telling Don Vito the news. I'm like, that's interesting. I definitely see like a film that feels like such a like a condensed world, almost like a John Wick, with its ideas of like there's this management in place. This one has its like there's this Godfather world in place of all these mafia bosses, and they have their own rules, and it doesn't like just list facts about it. It sort of just naturally drops it in a way that's very interesting. But it's not John Wick though, it doesn't have guns.
There's a few guns.
Yeah.
Leave the gun.
They're just
Take the canal.
they're not timed to the music though, Harry.
That's true. I'd say there's like in terms of lines. Of course, you could act like a man thing is a bit outdated, but like a real man spends time with his family.
Yeah,
I'd say
that
was some nice
great
things,
line.
That was a good line after it. That was
You got a lot of iconic lines in there. The score by what's his name? Nino Rola, I think.
That one riff.
Yeah, basically that theme that kind of is done so many times in so many little versions of it.
Hey Jonathan,
And, it's actually
they should have put in the theme from Cosa Nostra instead of the actual theme from The Godfather. So much more better.
should have gone to that Italian restaurant and played it. Try the veal. It's the best music. But yeah, it kind of has the Star Wars problem in a way. Everything is just so iconic, it's hard to sit down, for me anyway, and kind of try and objectively judge it. But I'm going to give it my score now because we were supposed to keep these ones short. So
and also give your score for Tower Heist, right?
Right, so Tower Heist, I think I think it's probably a 6 that I like, so I've given it a 7. It probably is a 6, but it's just fun. I like it. I like how they found this film in the Farsi language and they brought it over to America. Whereas The Godfather is one of the, I think, deservedly called one of the greatest films of all time. Obviously, it's that joke bar where if everything's better than The Godfather, it's really great. Also, I would like to say that City of God is better than The Godfather. Just like to put that out there. But yeah, it's fantastic. It really kind of, as a piece of entertainment as well as a piece of kind of cultural like history, it's really still fun. I enjoyed watching it. I don't think we've touched upon even half of what there is to talk about in this film. I love the kind of the way power is conveyed on screen. I think Michael is such a captivating character. I love how each of the kind of the sons of the Don take like aspects of him, and I love kind of the way the story goes in part 2 and how the film kind of contrasts Michael and Vito. But because I don't know if I'll agree with this by the end, but I think part 2 is the better film, and I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Well, I can go next if we're going to have the trend of the ratings get worse as we go. Or if you want to end on a high note, it's up to you.
You're going to start with Tower Heist? Can you imagine if we do this and we find out that Tower Heist has beaten Star Wars? It's like gotten 101, like somehow.
Yeah,
it's just the one film, but it's beaten not just the trilogy, but like the whole, like the total score.
A 79 out of 10.
I have to create the 40 plus club. Tower Heist.
It could be manageable though if we had a Tower Heist trilogy. So for the second one, they break Ben Stiller out of prison for one last job, that kind of thing.
Now the second one, you follow a young Eddie Murphy.
That'd be so good. No, you see those days when they're at nursery, him and Ben Stiller, and Ben Stiller's having those seizures, so everyone calls him Seizure Boy.
What was that thing, Ethan?
Watch Dodgeball again.
Yeah. Was it Dodgeball the one that's like, oh, you can watch it many times, you know, it's got layers?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's we do Tower Heist and we do Dodgeball and we do Dodgeball again.
Yeah.
You can watch it 5 or 6 times. Yeah, you're still gonna enjoy it. All right, Ethan.
Yeah.
Godfather.
All right, well, I'll start off with The Godfather. So, I pretty much completely agree with Harry. I think it is a timeless classic. It's such a well-rounded film. Every aspect of it is done to a particularly high standard, so that it comes off as something that has not many low points at all. And if there are low points, it'll probably just be because it came out in the early 70s. So the effect of someone hitting someone in the face won't be as great as one from today, for instance. But the characters are all fantastic. They're all really interesting to watch. Once you've seen it before once or twice and you go back to it, you have all these great moments that you remember. And especially towards the end, there's some really great moments when I'm just like, oh yeah, of course. Like the part where Tessio is going to meet Al Pacino and Barzini. And basically what happens is he walks out and they'll gang up around him. And he just knows straight away that they're just going to kill him because he. And then there's the other great moment when Carlo.
There's a great line there as well.
Yeah. When Carlo comes out and he gets into the car and you just see Peter Clemenza sat behind him and you're like, oh, that's never a good sign. You never want to be in a car with Clemenza sat behind you.
There's your husband.
But yeah. No, so like Harry, I'll give it quite a solid 9 out of 10. I really, really like this film. And Tower Heist is...
Is Goodfellas better, Ethan?
Oh yeah. No, I think Goodfellas is better. I really like Goodfellas, like a lot. That's like a borderline 10 for me, that film. But Tower Heist is probably... I don't know. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm actually going to give it a 7 because it's actually quite a good film. It's really enjoyable, entertaining. It got some hilarious lines. All four of the dudes doing the heist all just work so well together. It's a conventional story, yeah, I suppose, but hey, he's an out-spirited nearest, right? So yeah, low 7.
I should go next then, if if John is alright with going last.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll open with The Godfather, soften up the audience a bit, and then get into the real one. Godfather, yeah, I definitely will agree that we've discussed it has a lot of strong merits. I think it is a bit unfair. Well, I say unfair. I think just a lot of my problems with it are probably just going to come down to like subjective things. This like, oh man, there wasn't really anything specific in it that was like, hey, let's appeal to Tony's tastes with this thing. It was just, I think the thing with it being the best film of all time, or being considered the best film of all time, is the fact that it has such a broad appeal, which so it loses out on being like a really like specific niche thing, which I don't know. When you look at the things I give 10s and 9s to, they probably aren't as widely marketable, if that makes sense. I do have a few problems with it, as I discussed. I feel like the story kind of wobbles a bit in places, but I think overall it is very well constructed, and also especially for its length, it is engaging. Like if for a 3-hour film to be like not something I want to throw in the bin, like that's an achievement. So yeah, I think I'll give it, like I was debating between a 7 and an 8. And I think depending on how I thought of it in like the following week, I was going to choose one. And I haven't, like, if I were to rewatch it, and I can see why it's become so loved, because I bet people love rewatching it. They find new things each time. They learn the characters more. But in thinking about it, I didn't find like that much like super like nuanced details or new perspectives. So I think I will just leave it a 7 out of 10. For now, and that is, maybe it could go up in the future, but for now, that's my baseline.
It's as good as Loop.
Yeah, well, I mean, gonna lower Looper and Retcon 2, foreshadowing. break the fellowship of us all agreeing that it's a 7. But but when it comes to Tower Heist, man, Tower Heist, like it is just sort of like a meme kind of film that is just sprouted from me seeing half of it and then really liking the half that I saw, eventually seeing the entire film, be like, yeah, that's pretty good. And just the thing is, like, you think it's like throwaway entertainment, but like, it's just like, oh, it's just a cool, funny heist film. But like, no, it's the fact that this specific film is like the one throwaway film that I like remember, and so think like, man, maybe this film had a bit more to it than than we give it credit for just being a simple conventional narrative, as Ethan said.
It's got the advantage now that it has become a meme amongst this group, so I think we're all going to look on it slightly better than we might otherwise do.
And I think Godfather being memed, takes away from the experience. Tower Heist being memed, it just multiplies. It's a multiplying effect. And although we've done 50 minutes so far on Godfather, as much as I wish I could talk right now for 50 minutes about Tower Heist, I'll just pretty sum up that I think that with the heist especially, like, it does a great job of being like really kinetic, really great sense of action, and like, oh man, what they're working towards. Heist. It's in the name of the film. They're going to steal money, and the beginning of the film just does a great job of setting up characters and their motivations, and then the heist itself, does such a good frenetic job of just being like, they have to do this thing, but someone like dying in the chat. Anyway,
no, sorry, that's me.
But at the same time, it also does throw up, loads of problems that they have to deal with in, exciting ways. And it's not just like, okay, the heist film of like, we'll do it this way, and then they detail their plan, and we do this thing and then this thing, and then that happens, and like, we did it. The end. It's like, no, they have to, deal with, left turns and right turns. And I think, the overall message of Tower Heist being one of, essentially redistributing the wealth of the 1%, I think is a very salient message in today's economy. And I think it is one that, holds up, has value as much, if not more, than The Godfather, which is why I'll give it an 8 out of 10. There you go. Jono, what's your words?
What's my words? I'll start with The Godfather. I mean, my...
End on a strong note.
Oh wait, Jay, what did you give Tower Heist?
I just said 8 out of 10.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
I didn't really get into The Godfather when watching it, so it was difficult, because I mean there were some moments of because I wasn't particularly enjoying it at all, but then we got to that scene of when Michael goes and has a meeting with the two of them, can't remember their name, they begin with S and are difficult to pronounce, and then goes, and I remember feeling tension at that moment. It was like, okay, yeah, no, finally it's got me in, but then sort of after that, I just got uninterested again, and then I can't really remember then ever particularly being brought back until then going, oh yeah, that was a good piece of cinema there, where it had him, someone being baptized as all the leaders are being killed. It just didn't particularly engage me. And though I do like Harry pointing out all the cinematography words, the techniques used to make whenever they're indoors seem sort of like powerful mob bosses, but whenever they're out to seem weak. That was interesting. It's the sort of thing I enjoy. But I don't know. It just felt very average to me. And
yeah, it doesn't have much like wow factor to it. If that makes sense. It's kind of just solid.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I'd argue it has quite a lot of wow factor, but I mean, I like the film a lot more.
So I think I'm gonna give it a 6. I don't know, maybe on a good day a 7, maybe on a bad day a 5, but I'll go for 6. As for Tower Heist, I don't really know exactly what to give it.
You just gotta answer one question: is it better than The Godfather?
I know.
Come on, Johnny.
I think.
Boy.
I think I will go for a 7
Okay.
for Tower Heist, just because it's a 7 out of 10.
I want to tell you right now, I did not think we would go into this podcast with half of us saying that Tower Heist is better than the first Godfather.
It's just not though. It's 2 points shy of being better than The Godfather.
Damn.
So we can confirm that The Godfather is a better film than Tower Heist.
Good.
Tower Heist director's cut on the other hand. Who knows? Because in the director's cut is you watch the second half, then the first half, then the second half again. And you have to watch the first half in Farsi.
Non-linear storytelling.
Got to cut that together.
The Snyder cut of Tower Heist.
Yeah, and before you see the second half again, you have to have an intermission, like Spirited Man.
You have to wait like 4 months or whatever.
Alright, should we end this now?
Yeah.
But I think before we should go, we should say that we're doing another film. The final trilogy is we're going to do the first film of next time. And do you want to introduce that to us now, Jonathan Knowles?
Yes. Well, it's the Fellowship of the Ring is the next film, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or like we should probably work out if we're doing extended or non-extended.
I'd say don't do the extended, although I would like an excuse to watch them. That is a bit overkill.
I think depends what versions I have available, but I'll probably watch the extended and then like potentially add more. But no, that's what the next one is going to be. It's another well-known, very well looked upon trilogy.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see you in the next one.
We'll close out with the fact that the last shot of Tower Heist is better than the last shot of The Godfather. Goodbye.